Hey, it's Aaron Kushler and welcome to another video from EBSC. In today's video, I want to go over a question that I constantly get asked, and it's how can I use strength training for fat loss? See, it's one thing to, utilize strength training to obviously get stronger and build muscle, but how does that actually correlate to losing fat? If your major goal is to lose fat, look lean and muscular, how is strength training going to help you, and how can you actually get started? So in today's video, that's what I want to cover, and I've got a few points that I want to hit. And first of all, I want to explain to you why it's so important. You see, building muscle should be the forefront of what you're doing if fat loss is your goal. Why is that? Well, getting stronger and building muscle lends itself to actually shaping your body. If you have a desired look and you want to look lean and look muscular, you have to actually build that up in the first place. It's no good just losing a whole bunch of fat if there's no muscle underneath. You're just going to look like a smaller version of yourself right now. And you may have heard the term before, skinny fat. And that's basically what that means, is you're just basically a smaller version of yourself. Your proportions and your body's composition hasn't really changed. However, with strength training, the goal is to try and get as strong as you can so that your body is forced to actually build muscle and add that to your frame. And what happens is when you do that, your body's metabolism boosts up. So the more muscle that you have on your frame, the more active tissue you have sitting there at rest. And that burns calories all the time. In the beginning, it's not very much, but over time, the more muscle you add to your body frame, you're gonna naturally lean out. And that is going to make it a lot easier for you in the long run to maintain that. So at the forefront, you wanna be looking at methods that are gonna get you strong, methods that use a lot of muscle groups, and get you building, I don't want to use the word functional because it gets thrown around a lot, but functional muscle and functional strength. You don't want to be spending your whole session in the gym doing isolation exercises unless you've got the time. If you're pressed for time, and chances are that you've only got a certain amount of time, you want to be using things that build up a lot of muscle, build up a lot of strength really fast, and keep you athletic, and that are really, really effective. There's no point doing a whole bunch of exercises that may or may not work and that take a really long time to see an effect. You want something that's going to work pretty quickly. So what I've done is compiled a few points that we're going to go over in just a moment, addressing each of those. So how can you get started, and what's the best approach if you're new to this and you want to start off on the right foot? So as we said, I've got some points up here. As we said before, muscle boosts the metabolism. The more muscle you have on your frame, the more your metabolism is going to be raised at rest. It obviously shapes your physique. So muscle is the foundation to your body's shape. It doesn't get shaped by the fat tissue on your body, it just sits over the top of the muscle. So if you want to look a certain way and you want to have the appearance of wider shoulders, and a bigger back, you have to actually do that by building muscle. You can't magically just go in and start growing your shoulders outwards if you don't actually have the bone structure there. So you have to actually build it with muscle. And it's a lot of the times, one of the things that bodybuilders actually do is they actually construct the physique that they want. That's an extreme example, but you see in a lot of the competitions that's their purpose. That's what they want to do. They want to craft the ideal physique that they need for their competitions and that they want. And they use certain exercises in order to do that. So that's why engaging in strength training is so important, because muscle is what shapes your body, not necessarily the body fat. The next point is giant sets. Now, I've talked about this in other videos. I learned this method from Brian Alsrew. It's worked really well for him, and I've started utilizing it for myself and some of my clients, and it's been a game changer. You can get so much work done in a small amount of time, and you can really cover a lot of bases when you do it right and you set these up. So I'll link to another video where I go into a bit more depth about that one and how to actually use giant sets. But if you're looking for a really efficient way to hit a lot of areas in the same training session, say you only have 30 to 45 minutes, that would definitely be a method that I would recommend. It allows you to cover a lot of bases. And if you incorporate the next things that we're going to talk about, you're gonna see even better results much, much faster. The next point is explosive movements. You want a physique that's obviously looks good, but you want something that's gonna perform well. And the pinnacle of athletic performance is things like explosive movements, things that your body is designed to do, like sprints, jumps, anything where you're having to move very quickly. You don't want to shy away from those movements. You want to include them, But again, when they're done in the appropriate manner is when you're going to see the best result from that. You don't want to be overdoing something. It's like anything. You don't want to overdo it. Otherwise, that's when it starts to, you decline. You start to see the negative results of that. You might get sore knees, you might get sore shoulders, a sore back. You don't want to be doing that. So you want to use them in your program, but in accordance with proper loading protocols. And the last one that I want to just briefly touch on, we'll go into a bit more depth of each one, but is strongman training. If there's something that's been a game changer for myself and my clients, it's been strongman training. I haven't found anything as effective as that in such a short period of time. From a coaching perspective, it's really easy to get people doing these types of movements very quickly because the learning curve for the skills isn't very high. It doesn't take a lot of time to learn majority of the skills. Not all of them, but majority of the simple basic ones are really easy to learn, and you can learn them in just one session. So they make it really easy for you to really easily scale up the workout or scale it right back down. As opposed to something like a deadlift, which for some people they grasp really quickly, others might have restrictions around mobility. They can't get into a safe position to lift the bar, and then you have to make adjustments. There is a bit of a big learning curve there. Fantastic exercises, but again, if you're pressed for time and you want to get in, get out, and not really spend a lot of time having to mobilize yourselves to get into a safe position, strongman training is going to be your best friend. It works really well. It makes you really strong. When used as conditioning, it is brutal and it will give you a really, really good workout. So those are some really simple tips. What we'll do now is basically just talk about the giant sets in a little bit more detail, and then explosive movements, etc., and a bit more strongman training. I'll give you some ideas of where you can start with these, how to set them up, and if you're new to this, where should you all start with all of this, and how to actually get something together that you can make a start with. So giant sets, number one, as I said before, really simple. I learned this method from Brian Alsrew. It's been really helpful for me and really, really effective at getting a lot of work done really quickly. Now, the way that you set these up according to how he's done them is you do, your first movement is an antagonistic movement. Okay, so let's just say you go in and it's your bench press day. The antagonist to that, so the opposite of that, would be something like a horizontal row. So you might do something like an inverted row, or even a dumbbell row, or a chest supported row, something where you're pulling the weight towards you. So you want to do that as first. Exercise B is your main movement. So let's just say, we'll use bench press as the example. That's where that would fit in right there. Exercise C is a core variation. So anything where you're having to use your core a lot to either brace or to move, it depends on what you're doing, that's where that's going to fit in. And then D is going to be a conditioning movement. So basically anything that involves you, this is where your explosive movements might come in. Anything where you're having to do something that requires either you to breathe really heavy or to move something. For example, let's just say burpees, or you're doing explosive push-ups here. You might do something like a loaded carry. That's where the strongman element fits in. But again, just to recap what this actually is and how you do it, you start with exercise A, then you move to B, to C, and to D. So what you do is you go through those in order, you rest about 60 to 90 seconds, then you come back around and you start at A, B, C, D, all the way through, and your main goal is to build up to a heavy weight on the main movement. So whether it be, you're using 15, 20, 25, or even 30 minutes for your whole workout, that's where you would incorporate this. And that's where you can get a lot of work done in a short amount of time. You're still hitting the opposing muscle groups, you're working your main movement, you're doing a core variation, and you're also getting a little element of conditioning in there, so that you can see why these are so effective at increasing your strength, building muscle, and losing fat at the same time. They're a real game changer. Explosive movements, as we said before, are very, very important if you're doing them correctly. You don't want to be overdoing something. So something like a box jump. If we go back to our giant set example, let's say, for example, our main movement was a squat. Your antagonistic movement to that could either be something to do with the hamstrings. You could do an RDL, or you could even do, like what I like to do is actually put an explosive movement first to prime your nervous system, and then go into your main strength movement. So I would even put a box jump in here, then I'd come down, do a squat, we do a core variation and then a strongman variation or a conditioning element as our movement D. And that brings us to where we'd fit in strongman training. So the last principle there, this is where you would sub that in. So either in the conditioning or the core variation. A lot of the times, many of the carries that you do in strongman involve your core really heavily. So whether you're carrying one kettlebell or maybe it's a farmer's handle or you're even carrying both at the same time, they're both going to be really effective at building your core strength. So you can quite easily sub that in for your core work as well as your conditioning piece. So it makes it really effective to construct a program that way, utilizing strength training for fat loss. So if you're stuck and you're not sure where to begin and you want a simple, effective way at putting this all together, I'd highly recommend what we just spoke about with the giant sets, and I'd use these little principles that we spoke about. So include explosive movements, things like box jumps or hops, broad jumps where you're jumping forward, even just standing in place and jumping. So, you're doing a vertical jump, and then including strongman training in this giant set as well. So you're either doing it for a core variation or you're doing it for your conditioning. And I'm telling you, if you start doing that, you're going to see massive results in your program. So what we've gone over today is a bunch of information that's going to help you piece this together. However, what I've found through my own experience and also that of training my clients is it's not necessarily information that everyone is stuck on. It's the actual implementation, putting all of this knowledge into a plan and actually executing on the plan. So if that's you and you're stuck in a position right now and you're struggling to implement, you're struggling to put this stuff into an actionable plan and actually do it, I've actually created a challenge which is specifically for that purpose. It incorporates everything that we just spoke about in a simple and easy to follow way, and it's designed to get you into the right steps that you need to do to transform your physique. So you want to lose body fat, you want to gain some strength, and you want to start building muscle. This challenge is going to be really great for you. If you're interested in that and you want to jump on board before we start, check out the link down below in this video. I hope this video was really helpful. If you have any other questions, feel free to let me know in the comments down below. Do me a favor, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Share it with someone who you might find that could benefit from this, and make sure you use these principles in your own program. They're going to give you the best bang for your buck. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.